to me.
Information, news, and entertainment on demand.
WSRadio.com.
Welcome, neighbors, to Vecinos with your host, Maria Garcia.
Welcome to Vecinos. My co-host Oscar is back. As you know, Oscar does the first Wednesday of every month. And so I'm going to turn the radio right over to him and the mic over to him and let him talk a little bit about himself and introduce our guest.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much, Maria, for the introduction. So my name is Oscar Vasquez. I'm an assistant professor at the University of California in San Diego. And today I'm very happy to have our guest here, who is Gerardo Arellano. He's the director of the Raza Resource Centro. So Gerardo, he got his bachelor's from UC San Diego, and then he went to do a Ph.D. at UC Berkeley. And we're very thankful that he came back to UC San Diego to be the inaugural director of the Raza Resource Centro. And Gerardo, he also does research in transborder culture, migration, and de-colonial pedagogies. So, Gerardo, please tell us a little bit about yourself. Where are you from? Where are your parents from? How did you go to Berkeley, San Diego, and how did you end up coming back here?
Sure. First of all, I want to thank both of you for inviting me. And thank you so much for the labor of narrating the past and narrating people's stories. I think that's really important. I think with my story, it begins in Central California with my parents. Both of them are from Mexico. My dad was born in Mexico, but I would say like half of his life, I think he grew up in the U.S. And so, especially like when he was younger, he did some of his schooling here in the U.S. And so I think my story begins in Central California. My dad was a farm worker, and so was mom. And dad was began to see inequities with the growers and the ways in which the farm workers were treated. So he began to work with the UFW and to organize and just advocate for better working conditions for the trabajadores. And so in that process of organizing, there was a lot of stuff that he went through, which I'm not going to go into detail right now. And so out of that came a lawsuit. And so dad sued the growers, won the lawsuit, which is really rare at that time. Mexicanos don't win lawsuits. And so he won the lawsuit. With that capital that he earned, he was able to move us to L.A. And, dad went back to school and got a certification to be, I wouldn't say an engineer, but to do electrical work. And so from the very beginning, dad and mom have always emphasized education. I always love books. I love learning. I love hanging out with people with ideas. I remember during school, during my lunch break, instead of playing in the playground, I would go to the library and read books. And as I was going through the libraries, I was always wondering, like, how come these books don't tell my story? I never saw myself in those books. I never saw myself on TV. And so I always had a set of questions in terms of, how come my story is not there? Is it not valid? Who's writing our story? And so I think from there, this seed of learning sort of grew. And when I had an opportunity to do research, that was my first opportunity was in high school. I really enjoyed it. And so I think that led to a process of me, really listening to my parents and, really, focusing on getting education or degrees per se.
Gerardo, do you remember what research you did in high school?
I do. I remember. Now I'm a little bit embarrassed because
it's okay. It's okay. You were young. Okay.
No, it is. It's funny because my first research project was on Pancho Villa, but that's all that I had growing up. Right. I remember, like, when I was growing up, I did my elementary. I started my elementary in the 70s, and then I finished it in the early 80s. And so I tell you because I didn't have a lot of Latinx teachers. Like, I can count 3 Latinx teachers that I had in all of my education. And that's really, really bad. And so out of that, I didn't have a lot of role models, per se. And so when I heard stories, because oral stories, I heard people talk about, the Mexican Revolution. I heard people talk about Pancho Villa. And I wanted to know more about this person. So I did a research project in my high school English class. And I was really excited. I put the whole, paper together. I went to the library. I found some archives, and I put the story together, Pancho Villa. So my thesis in high school about Pancho Villa was not a thief or the ways in which some historians portray Pancho Villa, but more so Pancho Villa, certain parts of his life, he did give back to the poor. Right. And so I was calling him like a Robin Hood. I mean, I was very young. Obviously, I didn't know. Like later on when I began to teach Chicanx studies, we found out all multifaceted stories of Pancho Villa. But back then, that's all I had access to. And so I learned that essay was very powerful. It was so powerful that my teacher, who did not like my essay, gave me an F. And so I was on the football team at that time, and so I the coaches knew that I was really passionate about this. I would talk to them all the time. And so I told them the story. And so my football coach went to go talk to my English teacher and just like, what's going on here, right? And so I think at that point, I learned a really valuable lesson, that research is power. That if you can do research and come up with an idea that critiques the dominant narrative, right, that somehow that makes people uncomfortable, but it brings light to a story that oftentimes is not told, and it's worth the struggle. So I think instead of discouraging me from doing research, it actually encouraged me from writing and from doing research and thinking in terms of what will be my next step coming out of high school.
Did the teacher change your grade?
No. I think I was the only, because I had A's in everything else in that class, and because I got an F in that research project, I think my overall grade, that was the only C I had in high school that I think I got a C in that class, which is interesting because I had always gotten A's in English.
I wonder why you got an F.
I don't know.
Yeah.
But someone out there probably knows.
So then you went to...
Yeah. I mean, I'm a trio product, right? So I went through Upward Bound, and Upward Bound one summer took me to UCSD.
So can you tell us what is this TRIO program for?
Yeah, of course. TRIO program is a federal program designed to work with students that come from underserved communities. And so what they do is the program that I was involved with was a math and science Upward Bound that comes out of Harvey Mudd College. And so every summer I will be involved in a 4-month program where we will go to a particular campus and study math and science. And we had teachers, and of course, the idea is to kind of produce a feeling of what it would look like to be a college student, if you will. And so the program that I was involved with took us to UC San Diego twice, for the summer. And which was really interesting because coming out of high school, I had applied to 3 UCs, UC San Diego being one of them. And I think the reason that I applied to that school was because of Upward Bound. Had it not been for Upward Bound, I probably wouldn't have gone to San Diego. And I say that because I had gone into UCLA, and they gave me a full ride. A full ride. I didn't have to pay anything. And here I get to sit into UC San Diego, and they don't pay for anything. I had to pull out loans. I had to do all of this. And so I think the only competitive advantage that UCSD had is that it allowed Upward Bound from Harvey Mudd College to rent, parts of the campus. And so I think that exposed a lot of, students like myself to that campus. But yeah, that's my story. I ended up going to UCSD because of Upward Bound, I think, and put UC San Diego on the radar.
But I love this story about your research paper because I always tell the students I think one of the main points in life is when you have a disappointment, that's when you have to bring the best of you.
That's right.
That's when you have to say, I can do it. I'm not going to be let down.
It's those moments where things are really difficult, and that shows what kind of character you have and how resilient you are. And also shows your self-advocacy. Anyone can succeed when the playing field is fair. And we all know that that's a myth, right?
Yep.
And I'm not going to go into the dynamics of that. But can you succeed when you're dealing with adversity, right? What do you learn from that when people tell you no? Or we didn't do as well as you thought. So those are all learning opportunities where you can really grow as a scholar, and as later on as faculty and as an administrator.
But I guess something I would like to bring is that, you told that your parents were really supporting you into school and all that.
Yes.
So I have the feeling that when our kids have adversity in school, it's very important that the parents give you the support at home.
Absolutely.
I think that's a big changer because,
Right.
of course, you'll always find adversity, but at least
Right.
it at home,
Right.
you have that support. That's very important. That's a message for the parents who are
Right.
listening to us. Always be
Right.
cheering for your kids. So then you went for a PhD, right? How was the
did.
decision? I see kids who really...
Oscar, we haven't got him through college yet. What happened?
Oh, yeah.
Let's go through college first.
So yeah, my first year in college was really hard. I remember I was the only Latino in my math and science classes, and so it was no one wanted to study with me because they thought that maybe perhaps I wasn't smart enough or I don't belong, that kind of stuff. And so that to me sort of inspired me. Because I had played sports in high school. So there's a part of me that likes diversity and likes competition. So I saw that as opportunities for me to compete, right? And so it was that, but it's not fair. I don't think that it's fair that that's the culture that sometimes happens at the university that I saw and I experienced at UC San Diego, my first year. And so, with that, I also found out that my high school that I went to did not prepare me well for math and science, did not prepare me well in English and in writing. And I had a huge gap. And I didn't go to Summer Bitch, so there wasn't a way in which for me to address that. And so I had one shot to address it. That was my first year, right? And so what that meant for me is to go back to my comfort zone, which is to go to the library, spend more time there. And I learned so much from people. I learned from my friends who did go to Bridge, who were absolutely instrumental and valuable in my own growth. I also learned from faculty later on how to write, how to think critically, and also learned from administrators and staff who were really loving and gave me a lot of time for me to grow. So Rosada Sanchez was instrumental in my own intellectual growth as a researcher. Cecilia Obia was also super instrumental in my own growth as a scholar, but also as a practitioner. And the opportunities that I had through the Cross Cultural Center were really good too.
Okay, so let's go to the pause here, and then we'll come back to continue with this amazing story from Gerardo.
Yes, we're going to ask Gerardo to tell us more about his college experience when we return from commercial. Thank you.
A podcast or radio show on WS Radio is a great way to create content marketing. Turn prospects into customers into raving fans. Contact Wade at WSRadio.com or call 866-WS-RADIO.
The richness of your life is reflected in the shimmering elegance found at de-colonial Design. One-of-a-kind jewelry and pieces from Cynthia Dillon in silver and gold help to express your unique personality. The flowing designs of her creations will empower the way you move throughout your day. Join us online at DIOLUNdesigns.com.
Hi, this is Rob Barnett, CEO and founder of VinVillage.com and the Wine and Dine Show on Vin Village Radio. Do you have a wine, event, product, or service to promote? Then contact VinVillage.com to reach thousands of wine lovers across the country. VinVillage connects like-minded wine enthusiasts with unique and exclusive wines, events, products, and services. To learn more, contact us on VinVillage.com. VinVillage is where wine lovers connect.
One person has the power to change the world, impact millions of lives, and leave a legacy for lifetimes to come. That person is you. In the New York Times bestseller, What is Your What? Steve Olsher, award-winning author and founder of the Reinvention Workshop, reveals his proven process that has helped thousands of men and women discover, share, and monetize the one thing they were born to do. Grab your free copy now at www.whatisyourwhat.com/free. That's www.whatisyourwhat.com/free.
Take a break from politics. Tune in and learn something. WS Radio shows are worth your time and are filled with tips and advice. Add us to your lunch routine and we'll give you a meal for your mind.
Small businesses are the lifeblood of America's economy. Every Thursday, SBA Radio interviews industry professionals and is dedicated to provide small businesses with timely insights and innovations. Visit www.sbaradio.us for details.
Tired of presentations with no impact, no inspiration, and no traction? Do dull speakers have you and your team disengaged and distracted by smartphones? Christopher McAuliffe brings energy, insights, and 2 decades of experience, delivered with punch, humor, and heart. Your team will leave energized, uplifted, and with a sense of purpose. Visit ChristopherMcAuliffe.com to bring some heat to your next speaking engagement. McAuliffe. ChristopherMcCullough.com.
Talk to me.
Information, news, and entertainment on demand.
WSRadio.com.
Welcome, neighbors, to Vecinos with your host, Maria Garcia.
Okay, welcome back. And Gerardo, you were mentioning that your first year at college was very, very difficult, and
tough,
I think
yes.
that's very important because I mean you're not the only one. I've seen students who come like challenges in math, in writing, but I love when you say that you realized that was something that you were lacking, and you take things on your own hands and went and look for help. Tell us more about
Absolutely. Like I realized that the performance that I was used to was not where it needed to be at, and I noticed that I had an opportunity to address it, and so I think the first learning happened through my friends. So my circle of friends, and there were so much better writers than I was. And so learning from them, having the courage to circulate your writing and to be vulnerable with them and for them to show grace and offer you, their critique, their take, and then learning from their critique.
For our listeners, what does circulate your writing mean?
It's just to share. Just share your writing.
Other people read your writing.
Right. Other people, you share it, and then people comment on it, and then you learn from the critique. And so when I felt comfortable with that, then that went to the second phase, which is then learning from faculty. And for those faculty members that were willing to give critique, because sometimes they're so busy that they don't have time to do that. And also, of course, people like Cecilia Obia at Oasis, who always makes time for scholars. And so I learned a lot from her. And then from there, I think I then began to do research through 199s, through the Ronald D. McNair program, and work with Rosaura Sanchez. And so I think from there, it just really was beautiful in the sense that I have always have an activist heart, have always had a heart to serve comunidad. And so as an undergraduate, I was an activist. I consider myself an activist, and I was, part of the Aspiroibs, which was a collective zine, and that was funded by alternative media. And so that was a way for us to sort of document stories of inequity, if you will, but also celebrate diversity and, celebrate just the work that our communities do, in the name of democracy, in the name of the inclusion. So that was really exciting to be part of that form of telling your story, activism, and then also doing research, which is another form of activism, is when you rescue the past. And when you center people that oftentimes are systemically neglected, and you rescue them, or not them per se, but their stories. And so you place those stories in conversation with dominant narratives, and you see what the gaps are. And so I think that the research, the activism, and then I was also a tutor, and I tutored and coached a lot of students in writing. And I was also became a labor organizer at the time where we were organizing the TAs and the tutors for better working conditions and better rights. And so I think everything came really nicely in the late 90s. And it was such a powerful learning opportunity for me. It was definitely high impact learning because I learned so much more outside of the classroom with research and activism and advocacy around labor than I ever did inside of the classroom. And so that to me, really kind of excited me about what does it look like to just do this kind of work outside of the classroom. And then later, I had an opportunity to, because I was in the McNair program, I had done research and I had loved that, to think about what's next. And so for me, what was next, I worked a couple of years after I graduated from UCSD. I was like a counselor in Barrio Logan in one of the middle schools. I forget which one. But I really enjoyed that job.
Could it have been Memorial?
Yes, it was Memorial. Yeah. It was Memorial, and I love that job. The students were awesome, and there was a conversation about having me there full time, but then I just decided that I got a little scared from that. I'm like, no, I still have unfinished business in academia, and so I ended up the following year applying to grad school, and I went to the school that gave me the most money, the most fellowship money, and that was UC Berkeley, who when they accepted me, also offered me a multi-year fellowship, so I didn't have to worry about working a whole lot.
So how was your change into UC Berkeley? Was it easy, like the decision today to say, I'm going to go for grad school?
I think like the first year the same. It was the first year. I don't know what it is with me in my first year. I always seem to
first years are always difficult.
Yeah, I always seem to.
For all of us.
Okay.
All of us, yeah.
So the first year was, again, sort of from a culture perspective, it was really eye opening. So I just didn't. I don't know. Wasn't. It was just a little different. It was challenging. I wouldn't say the academic load was challenging. I got used to that, and I think it's just like the idea of feeling that you belong, the idea that that you fit in. So I'll tell you a story. Like my first year, I was after one quarter. Not a semester. So after one semester, I went to go see one of my faculty members, Elaine Kim, who was teaching my class. He was also the dean, and I told Elaine, I think I'm going to drop out. And and then she asked, why, Gerardo? You have a 4.0. Yeah, you're doing really good academically. Why you want to drop out? And then I said, because I don't feel like I fit in. And then she starts laughing and laughed, and I'm like, why are you laughing so much? And she said, oh, Gerardo, let me silly. No one fits in. We all just pretend. Well, no, that is brilliant, Elaine. I didn't know that. I didn't know this was all theater. To a certain extent, what Elaine was referring to was the politics of academia and the culture of academia, where ideas and being able to back up your ideas with archives, with research matter. And so all of us sort of, play, in this culture, but really who really belongs. And so I think from that point on, I felt better about me being at Berkeley. And then later on, I've worked with Saldívar. And Jose Saldívar was my mentor at UC Berkeley. He was so supportive, very calm, collective, and of course, huge in the work that he does. So work with them and the geography department, Ruthie Gilmore and Richard Walker. So I felt a lot of support there. And I felt support with Michael Omi, too, in ethnic studies. And so I think from there, I just, was able to get support and I finished my work, my dissertation.
What was your work?
See, that's really interesting because
you're talking about getting support, but what kind of support for what?
Yeah, so the research that I was doing was looking at the power of culture, right? So what does, when we look at like traditional Marxism, if you will, and we look at sort of the proletariat as having that ability to sort of critique or to influence the flow of capital or create a crisis, I was, reading in terms of the tradition of some Marxists who have sort of built on the idea of engaging the superstructure, sort of culture, ideology in the state and its role in, reproducing social relations and equality. So what I was looking at is the power of transporter culture, the power of corridos, the power of norteñas for its capacity to critique, but to sort of create a different way of understanding the Americas, but also tell a story through the power of sonic culture. And so I was researching that, how folks sort of question dominant narratives through the power of culture, and then also to what extent can culture be that new front. Much the same way when there was a lot of publishing that was going on around the proletariat in the 1800s. Could the proletariat be that force? Later on, of course, we find out that no, capital itself produces its own crisis with overproduction. So it's not really the proletariat. It's the ways in which these cycles of capital go and the contractions that happen. So my work was on the power of culture and identity and what that can do to empower people. So I love working with students outside of the classroom. I love culture. I love identity. I love analyzing the state. I love politics. And so I think that led to my first job coming out of Cal, which was at Cal State Fullerton, being a teacher. So I taught. It was a teaching school. So I taught a lot of classes. I think my record was 5 classes in one semester, plus running a grant, or at least the program and assessment part of the grant. So
let me tell you that I did drop my first PhD because I feel I wasn't fitting.
Oh, really?
And I did quit my first PhD. So
I didn't know that. Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. So sometimes
the feelings are real.
Absolutely. Yeah. I was also in a different environment, so I didn't feel that I was fitting in, and I quit. And I took a break for 1 year.
Right.
So, Gerardo, so then you finally, how did you come to UCSD you came back to UCSD and
right,
the Research
Let's
Center.
go back to Cal State Fullerton for a minute.
Yeah.
What did you teach, and what were some of your interactions with kids?
Yeah, I taught Chicanx studies and American studies. So I taught a lot of the history courses, and under Chicanx studies, I taught the communications courses. I taught Mesoamerican history, also Mexican history, and then I taught American studies, American history, U.S. history, American culture. And so it was really exciting because I feel like Cal State Fullerton really gave me that opportunity to teach this diversity of courses. And then I also worked for a grant, the EPOCS grant, which was designed to increase the number of Latinx students going on to grad school and then finishing their MAs and then going on to doctoral programs. So there is where I had an opportunity to work with students outside of the classroom, to work around academic success, and just really get folks ready to really succeed in their master's programs. And so that was really exciting. So that's the work that I did at Cal State Fullerton.
How do you get folks ready to be successful? What are some of the things you focus on?
I think it just depends. If you're asking me at the level of the institution, then I think it comes with data, like being able to access the data, being able to examine the data, being able to find patterns in the data, and developing a set of questions around the patterns that you see in the data. And those questions are designed to really address what the gaps may be, what our Latinx students may need. And then from there, you develop capacities within the university, whether it be a program, whether it be bringing in faculty to do mentoring. So you think about the different ways in which, depending on what the data is telling you, the ways in which you can engage scholars. And that's assuming that scholars want to be engaged, because that goes back to self-advocacy. So then the real question what we struggled with, which was really exciting in the EPOCS grant, is what do you do with scholars that don't have a high self-advocacy, right? And so that's a whole nother onda, if you will.
And that would be probably a master's thesis, how to motivate.
So that's at the institutional level. At the individual level, as faculty, it starts with validating people's stories and setting the bar really, really high. And then, holding people accountable to that bar.
Keep that thought and we'll go into it more. Okay, thank you very much.
Tired of presentations with no impact, no inspiration, and no traction? Do dull speakers have you and your team disengaged and distracted by smartphones? Christopher McAuliffe brings energy, insights, and 2 decades of experience, delivered with punch, humor, and heart. Your team will leave energized, uplifted, and with a sense of purpose. Visit ChristopherMcAuliffe.com to bring some heat to your next speaking engagement. McAuliffe. ChristopherMcAuliffe.com.
Take a break from politics. Tune in and learn something. WS Radio shows are worth your time and are filled with tips and advice. Add us to your lunch routine and we'll give you a meal for your mind.
I raised $8,000 to build schools for South African children. After realizing how many people go hungry in San Diego, I now volunteer at a food pantry.
I'm spending the next year doing volunteer projects across 3 countries and helping in ways they designate to be the most helpful.
The WorldLink program at the Joan B. Kroc Institute for Peace and Justice recognizes the potential of youth as agents of social change. Learn how you can help youth become a generation of leaders in action at peace.sandiego.edu.
Attention business owners. If you feel like your business owns you and want to grow your company and get your life back, then get the Scale Toolkit at scaleyourbusinesstoolkit.com. Created by Wall Street Journal bestselling author David Finkel and Priceline.com co-founder Jeff Hoffman, this free collection of 36 videos and PDF tools will help you build a business, not a job. Go to scaleyourbusinesstoolkit.com today and learn how to work less by getting your business to produce more.
Small businesses are the lifeblood of America's economy. Every Thursday, SBA Radio interviews industry professionals and is dedicated to provide small businesses with timely insights and innovations. Visit www.sbaradio.us for details.
If you heard that sound, you probably are eligible for insurance from Navy Mutual, insuring the men and women of the Navy, Marines, and Coast Guard. Here's what one policyholder, retired Navy Commander Thomas Dade, had to say.
Navy Mutual is the best insurance decision I ever made. I wish you had a savings plan available that earned the rates my Navy Mutual insurance has been earning.
Navy Mutual Aid Association, started by military members in 1879, serves active, reserve, and retired military today. Navy Mutual honors our military by providing them affordable life insurance with the features they need without fine print, sales fees, or military service restrictions. Value, integrity, trust, and stability are the cornerstones on which our commitment to you and your loved ones are built. Call Navy Mutual at 1-800-628-6011 or NavyMutual.org for your personal life insurance plan consultation. 1-800-628-6011 or NavyMutual.org. Navy Mutual, insuring those who serve.
Talk to me.
Information, news, and entertainment on demand.
WSRadio.com.
Welcome, neighbors, to Vecinos with your host, Maria Garcia.
Welcome back to Vecinos. Our guest today, Gerardo, will be talking more about his experiences at UCSD, but he's used a term that some of you may not be familiar with. I'm going to ask him to translate for those of us that aren't at academia every day. For example, Latino X or Chicano X or any of the X.
Right. Thank you so much for asking that question. Latinx, Chicanx, the X signifies being conscious of the fact that there are non-gender people that don't conform to particular standards of gender, particular dominant standards of gender. And so the X is there to validate them and allow them to decide or not decide what gender they may be. So when you use the X, it's to give people an opportunity for them to explore their identity and to identify the ways in which they are and they feel comfortable with. Now, there's a whole back story to that, which I'm not going to go into, but that's what that means.
Okay. Now, you're leaving Fullerton and you come to San Diego.
Yes. Yeah,
What are you doing?
What am I doing? I think what's exciting about this job and is that I get to work with colleagues. I get to work in a collective. I get to work with a different set of students through a cohort model that we bring in students to be interns. I have an assistant director and then also an operations coordinator, and so we get to all work together to sort of build the centro. So
what is the centro?
The centro is one of different campus community centers. So we have the Black Resource Center, we have the LGBT Center, the Cross Culture Center, the Women's Center, the Intertribal Center. We have APIMEDA programs, and of course we have the Raza Resource Centro. So all of the community centers, in a lot of ways, come out of student activism. If it wasn't for students who advocated for more diversity and inclusion and spaces that felt like home, and ways in which the university didn't feel like home, we wouldn't have these centers. It wasn't like as the university, UCSD, was building itself that it thought, it would be a best practice if we, have a Raza Resource Centro or a cross-cultural center. I think this is something that students have to advocate for. And so even my department, EDI, comes out of student activism. And so I think it's really important to sort of know that, validate that, because the work that we're doing at the university is really empowering our students, validating their stories, creating capacities to allow them to be successful, listening to their critique and holding that critique and being able to build around that critique and inform your strategic plan around that critique.
What is EDI?
EDI stands for Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion, and it's a UC system-wide, and I would even say like a nationwide movement, and where universities are holding themselves accountable to numbers and data and diversity at the faculty level, at the student level. And so I think that the EDI, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion departments are important because it's a way in which to build capacity around diversity and ensure that really the structural barriers are addressed or are a process, a work in progress. So that's EDI.
So what kind of diversity do you have at UCSD?
That's a broad question. So let me say I'm going to talk about that within the context of the Raza Resource Centro and then the work that we do through the Hispanic Serving Institution work group that we have together. So diversity for us at the Centro is really being mindful and intentional about how we interact and engage our Latinx students, making sure that they have opportunities for them to grow, making sure that we have a space for them where they feel comfortable in terms of learning, in terms of just being in community, making sure that we're building community alongside them, making sure that they have access to coaching, to advising, but to folks that kind of feel and can understand their story, and then developing models within the Raza Resource Centro that are high learning impact models. Like we have civic engagement opportunities where students can go to Logan Heights. They're part of Barrio Gardeners. They can garden there on the weekends and give back to community. We have programs with Escolita Aslan out in Barrio Logan where UCSD students can go out and work with junior high students and high school students around a different set of themes, social justice, college readiness. We also have programs where we work with scholars to enhance their scholarly identities. And so we help them write research proposals, and we help them and coach them in getting them into national conferences so they can present their research. We help them in terms of getting grants and scholarships so they can get funded to do their research. And research is super critical at an R1 university. UC San Diego is an R1 university.
R1?
What that means is that UC San Diego, in a lot of ways, the foundation of the work that we do at the university with our scholars is that it's a research-intensive university. And so what we like to do and the work that we like to do at the center is to remind our students that they're scholars first, that, we put research on their radar for them to sort of think about. Some of them are not ready, maybe their first, second year, maybe the third, fourth year, they're ready to do some research. But it's really important that they, think about what does research look like for them and how can research be empowering and validate their scholarly identities so they can move on to medical school, graduate school, professional school. And you need to have or be research literate to be able to move on to the next level. And I think that's just part of leadership, having really good research literacy skills.
And Gerardo, this is a very important question. How do our Latinx students they feel after Trump election at UCSD?
I think that's a good question. I think for us, we have continued to do our work. We have continued to invest in our programs, invest in our scholars, continue to listen to them in terms of what they're going through, continue to communicate those expectations that our scholars have to leadership, and working with leadership and our scholars to making sure that the environment is such where our students feel comfortable and they can grow. I tell you, this past, we have had a lot of success this year with our conferences. We are a team of, I think 6 scholars just went to CACHE, which is a statewide conference for community centers. So 6 of our scholars were able to participate in that conference. 9 out of 10 scholars got their research proposals accepted to present at the National Association of Chicano Studies, which is going to happen in Minnesota. So that's a 90% mark. So what we do is we continue to do our work, develop our programs, and compete with people nationally to do the work that needs to happen to move the needle. So whether maybe some noise, I think at the level of the work that we're doing and the ways in which we're engaging each other and building community and keeping track of the work that we're doing, I think that, we're still running full throttle.
So have you felt that, at least at the faculty level, we have a group of faculty, but we have feel like we need to do more work. And
right.
It's kind of like when you've had to punch, you want to punch back.
Right.
And I wish that, I hope that that's also the feeling that we should transfer to the students, that, we're here to fight, and this is a chance to prove that we are actually very productive people.
Absolutely. And I think that's the idea, is like figuring out where you can make the intervention, right? What is the, the scale in which you can operate at the university, and then having that, coming from that perspective, right? How can then you sort of impact that field? So for faculty, I think that's a great question. There's ways in which they can get involved, right? Mm-hmm. It just depends on where you're at and what you can get involved with. I know that we have a work group at UC San Diego where we're really critically examining the literature and also what other universities have done to ensure the success of Latinx students. And so we have faculty on that committee that can do their advocacy, can do their activism through that work, right? So I think really, in my opinion, true activism it can be manifested in many different ways. One of the ways in which it can be manifested is transforming the university in a more equitable and inclusive way. And this is my opinion, thinking of ways in which we can collectivize the social capital of the university to affect the success of our Latinx students. So to me, that's where it's at. It's how knowing that the university commands a vast amount of resources, knowing that our students come into the university with the past that, in a lot of ways is engineered through systemic inequities, if you will. Mm-hmm. How do we then, create opportunities for our scholars to access what the university has to offer?
Gerardo, also before we finish, do you want to comment also on your last work on the paper about the faculty, the Hispanic faculty in the United States?
Yeah. So one of the ways in which we can think about what does it look like to be more inclusive is by looking at data, right? Liberating data. True equity work has to involve the liberation of data. So Professor Olivia Grave from the School of Engineering, me and her postdoc Jaime, we worked together and we looked at national numbers and national trends in terms of how many Latinx engineers are faculty members that were born in the United States. So we're looking at U.S.-born Latinx engineering faculty in the United States. And do you know how many we found?
Tell us.
We found 48. So 48 is completely unacceptable.
Wait, let me emphasize that for a minute. 48 in the entire United States.
That's
not
it.
48 in San Diego.
Yeah,
48 in the entire
I wish we
United
had 48 in
States.
San Diego, but 48 nationwide. So what the data, what that tells us is that there is a gap and there is an opportunity to develop a scalar institutional capacities to be able to work with government, work with the private industry, or work with the university to develop pipelines that actually work, to teach and to cultivate math and science early on, not until high school, but maybe early on from elementary to junior high. Because if we're not, the state that we're at right now, we're depending on international talent.
Hold that thought. We'll be back in a few minutes. Thank you for being here with us. We appreciate it so much.
On the internet, your business's reputation can be unjustly destroyed in an instant. Don't wait for that to happen. Building and marketing your 5-star reputation can increase your business by as much as 19%. Take control of your reputation and have the 5-star reputation you deserve with Reputation Marketing Solutions by DSI Development. Become the go-to company by visiting 5starrepmarketing.com. The number 5starrepmarketing.com.
Hi, this is Rob Barnett, CEO and founder of VinVillage.com and the Wine and Dine Show on Vin Village Radio. Do you have a wine, event, product, or service to promote? Then contact VinVillage.com to reach thousands of wine lovers across the country. VinVillage connects like-minded wine enthusiasts with unique and exclusive wines, events, products, and services. To learn more, contact us on VinVillage.com. VinVillage is where wine lovers connect.
You've heard me talking about Progressive Medical Center. They have helped me feel my best. And Dr. Goli, tell us a little bit about integrative medicine. Why is that such a big deal at Progressive Medical Center, and how can that make me feel better?
Integrative medicine is just good medicine. It's combining the best of traditional medicine, nutritional medicine, natural medicine, and really helping the patient get to the root cause so they can take control of their health and really make an impact to improve not only their energy, their vitality, and just their overall outlook on their health and their life.
I procrastinated for a long time before I finally made an appointment. So why should someone not delay and go ahead and get set up and come see you guys?
Any journey begins with that first step, and that first step means making a decision to recognize that there's something wrong with you. Whether you have fatigue, inappropriate weight gain, not sleeping well, not concentrating, all of these issues, you can get to the root cause.
So many of us here at The Fish have gotten help from Progressive Medical Center. So why don't you find out more from them today? Go to progressivemedicalcenter.com.
This is your life, live it well.
You take your smartphone almost everywhere you go. Now WSRadio.com can be there too. Search WS Radio in the Play Store for your Android devices or iTunes for Apple and download the WS Radio application. WSRadio.com on your phone and in your ear everywhere you go. Download the WS Radio application. Do it now. It's very easy. WSRadio.com.
Attention business owners. Does it feel like your business owns you? See if you qualify for a free 90-minute business coaching session to help you build a business, not a job. During this free 90-minute strategic consultation, one of our senior coaches will help you map out the best way to grow your company and get your life back. To learn more, go to MauiMasterminds.com/scale now. That's MauiMasterminds.com/scale now.
Talk to me.
Information, news, and entertainment on demand.
WSRadio.com.
Welcome, neighbors, to Vecinos with your host, Maria Garcia.
Welcome back to our last segment of Vecinos. I'm Maria Garcia on WSRadio.com, the worldwide leader in Internet talk. And today we have our guest, who Oscar has a few more questions for, and I think I'll just turn it right over to him.
Yeah, Gerardo, so tell us more about this, your study about the faculty population in the...
Absolutely.
In the
I just want to tell the audience that if you're interested in reading this article that was just published a couple weeks ago, you can find it in the bulletin, and it's published by the university, I think it's Cambridge University Press. So you can go ahead and look it up, and I think the title is Latino faculty in the United States. And so what we started off with the question in terms of how can we, doesn't create an impact if you have or if you don't have enough Latinx, U.S.-born Latinx faculty in engineering in terms of cultivating the next generation of Latinx engineers. And so we started by looking at the data to see what that story is like, and we found 48 faculty members that are Latinx that are in engineering. And so there's a lot more Latinx folk that are born in Latin America, but because of their place and where they were born and their class background, it's very difficult for them to identify with U.S.-born Latinx scholars, if you will. And so there is a disconnect there. So with the 48 Latinx engineering faculty that we found, that's the reality is that that's not enough faculty to be able to cultivate the next generation of leaders in engineering. And so what the problem is, I would argue, is that we have Latinx faculty members, but we're importing them, right? And so they're coming from Latin America, right? And I think that's the trend in engineering, right? We're importing our engineering talent. And so I think at one point, we need to really ask ourselves and really ask that question, what are the structural inequities in the United States that are silencing the careers and the leadership opportunities in math and science of our U.S.-born Latinx scholars, right? And so I think that there is an opportunity for us to build an infrastructure, to build a pipeline that's self-sustaining, to really increase the number of U.S.-born Latinx scholars that are going into engineering, getting their doctorates, and becoming faculty. And so that's where the opportunity is at. And if we don't change that, then we will continue to rely in a lot of ways on international talent. And so that's the predicament we're in.
I think, I agree with you, and we've been discussing this. I mean, at UCSD, we do efforts to outreach for high school students to improve their math skills, but I think sometimes that comes a little bit late, right? I think we should, start already elementary school, middle school, because it's also the mindset of having those goals, and those are difficult to address. So, do you think we should start really looking at how are we train our kids from the elementary level?
Yeah, absolutely. You can start by looking at the curriculum and also the expectations of that curriculum, and also questioning to what extent is standardized testing a way in which to measure the intellect capacity of our scholars. So I think what happens in the United States sometimes is that students are blamed for their inability to learn. They're blamed, so it's sort of their fault if they can't figure the concepts out. And so very rarely do we look at curriculum design or the ways in which pedagogy is sort of framed and taught. And so I think the answer lies in pedagogy, lies in the curriculum, lies in investing in our schools and developing a pipeline, partnering with universities, community colleges, and the private sector to develop a different way of learning, that maybe it's more collective learning, not individualistic, ways in which we can excite our youth about, the power of science and the power of math and the power of engineering. And I think that story, the ways in which we frame it and the ways in which we hold people accountable at the learning level, whether it be districts or whether it be teachers, I think that there's still more room for opportunities and growth. So there's only so much you can get away with by blaming people, blaming the students, right? Because they're the most vulnerable, right? I think at one point you need to start looking at the districts, looking at the curriculum, looking at the teachers, looking at the universities, looking at the private sector, and what is your role, right, in increasing the next generation of Latinx engineers in the United States, or do you not have a role? And when they begin to say, well, that's not my role, then I think, that's part of the issue, and I think we need to really think hard about that.
And I think we should also include the parents, right? Because sometimes we have Mexican parents who come from Mexico who are also... They also have low levels of literacy in Mexico. So when they come, they don't even know how the school works at the U.S. So it's very difficult for them to help your kids. That's another challenge that we face.
Yeah.
And
I would say that's at play, but I would feel comfortable blaming parents and the students completely. I think that leaves the structure off the hook.
It's about involving everyone.
I'm totally uncomfortable with blaming parents.
No, but it's not about blaming. It's like involving them. It's like bringing them to...
Involving parents is one thing.
Yeah.
But the school systems have failed our students.
Right. Yeah, and I think where you're going, Professor Mena, I think looking at ways in which we can engage the parents, because that's the work that we do at the Centro with Claudia Martinez doing really phenomenal work in this area, is sort of engaging the parents. Like, the success of our students is also dependent on the success and the fluency that our parents have in terms of understanding what the college experience is going to be like. So I think that they go hand in hand. I'm just speaking to those dominant narratives that will feel very comfortable and happy championing the idea that Latinx culture is not made to do math and science. And of course, we know that that's not true from our past, from Mesoamerican history, absolutely. Mayan history, Nahua culture. We know that these civilizations were very highly mathematical. They were literate. They had their own ways of writing and telling the story. Whether or not anthropologists can decipher that, that's a whole nother onda. That's a whole nother conversation. It's taken 300 years to prove that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I always tell the students, I have kids of these indigenous kids in Mexico, in Chiapas, who don't have schools, and I told them they have the same blood of the people who were finding when the next eclipse was going to happen. Yeah. So that's very important. So also tell us a little bit about the role of UC San Diego, UC Berkeley. How are we doing? Let's say improving diversity along the community. That's
a beautiful question.
What are we doing good? Where shall we improve?
Right. Yeah, I think that where we are right now, as compared to when I was a student, my story, my first year. Mm-hmm. My first year, I remember that the Latinx population at UC San Diego was around 5%. And it felt like a lot lower than that, right? Yeah. Now, the Latinx population at UC San Diego is around 20%. And that's huge. It's gone up. And that's because our scholars are so well prepared coming out, they have a lot of options. So when it comes to Latinx students, they have a lot of options in terms of where they can go. And I think now the opportunity for the university is we need to be intentional in developing an infrastructure, or at least coordinating the already established infrastructure, so that we can make the resources legible to this new cohort of Latinx students that are coming into the university. Oftentimes, students don't even know what's here at the university. And there's some gaps that we need to address. Actually, there's multiple gaps we need to address. And so I think at this point, it's capacity building within the university, and then maybe perhaps partnering with maybe the community colleges, and or other HSI models, like maybe a Cal State Fullerton or a Cal State San Marcos, to develop pipelines. And we can apply for grants through the federal government, because we're on the road to become an HSI. So this is where the opportunity is using grants to develop capacity in HSI, Hispanic Serving Institution. Bringing in grants to develop capacity within UC San Diego, and then be able to document that through data, and be able to cultivate that and sort of work with leadership, right? Work with the chancellor, and prove that these kinds of programs, this kind of infrastructure actually makes a difference. So then we can institutionalize the grant. Going from grant to grant to grant and not institutionalizing it is, in my opinion, a form of failure, right? The idea is to get things institutionalized, not to, I bet que pasa next year. See if we get funded. I'm like, if you're playing the game that way, you're losing.
By the way, talking about education, on Saturday, March 3rd, we'll have a big event at UC San Diego, Comienza con un Sueño.
Yeah.
So we are inviting all the parents and kids to come to UCSD to learn about like UCSD and how to get financial aid, how to apply to college. It's going to be a big
it's going to be a great conference.
If someone wants to go, how do they go about enrolling?
They just come to UCSD on March 3rd. And that's all they have to do. Yeah. March 3rd, Saturday, come to UCSD. And
it's for junior high students, high school students.
Elementary school, it's all levels. Huh?
Yeah.
It's all levels.
It's a great partnership.
Yeah.
Thank you both very much. Thank you because you gave us a lot of information, a lot of information. I appreciate it so much.
Thank you so much, and see you in 1 month from now.
I'll be here next week.
Liberating information.
Yeah.
If you don't liberate information and data...
A podcast or radio show on WS Radio is a great way to create content marketing. Turn prospects into customers into raving fans. Contact Wade at WSRadio.com or call 866-WS-RADIO.
Kinja Dixon was crowned the #1 sales executive through hard work, deep thinking, and the revelation of universal talk laws. He now wants to share these lessons with you. Universal talk laws are what you need to know and use in business and at home to have successful and effective conversations. Kinja Dixon shares his wisdom, action plans, and wealth. Each book comes with a chance to win $10,000. Find Universal Talk Laws at KinjaDixon.com. On the internet, your business's reputation can be unjustly destroyed in an instant. Don't wait for that to happen. Building and marketing your 5-star reputation can increase your business by as much as 19%. Take control of your reputation and have the 5-star reputation you deserve with Reputation Marketing Solutions by DSI Development. Become the go-to company by visiting 5starrepmarketing.com. The number 5starrepmarketing.com.
Hi, Scale listener. This is David Finkel, co-host with Jeff Hoffman of Scale Your Business. I wanted to let you know that our newest book, Scale, was just released and to encourage you to get your copy. The book will give you 7 proven principles to grow your business and get your life back. If you've ever wanted to grow your business, but held yourself back from fear that it would take over your life, then we urge you to get your copy of Scale today. It'll give you a proven roadmap for rapidly growing your business while also gaining more personal freedom. Scale will help you work less by getting your business to produce more. Scale is for every entrepreneur who ever wondered if they really own their business or if their business owns them. Get your copy online or at your local bookseller. For more information, visit us online at scaleyourbusinesstoolkit.com. That's scaleyourbusinesstoolkit.com.
Controversy and conversation to upset the status quo. A no-holds-barred exploration and obliteration of the limits of possibility. Join me, Steve Olsher, and my rambunctious crew on Reinvention Radio, where each week we scour the planet to bring you the world's foremost social, business, political, technology, and scientific disruptors who challenge the accepted and forge daring, cutting-edge paths. That's Reinvention Radio, where normal comes to die and mediocrity meets its final demise.
Hi, this is Rob Barnett, VinVillage.com, where wine lovers connect. Be sure to tune in weekly to Vin Village Radio for exclusive, in-depth interviews with the who's who in wine and food.